my loves, it's Hailey Reese, and today I am going to be sharing with you one of my many airport stories that have gone horribly wrong, and this one just so happens to have to do with this fur jacket. But before I get into this video, I'm going to apologize in advance for wearing a hat yet again in another video. It's just with this broken arm, I literally can't style my own hair. I feel like it's a massive accomplishment that I could even do this ponytail. So baby steps, guys. Soon enough, I will be back to my regular dues. But without further ado, let's get into this crazy ass story time. So this story takes place when I was 18 years old, and at the time, my boyfriend was living in Miami and I was living between Los Angeles and Toronto. I was mostly living in LA, but I was going back to visit family every now and then in Toronto. So this was one of the times that I had went back to visit my family in Toronto, and I was gonna be going back to LA, but because we were doing distance, I figured the flight to Miami is a shorter distance, so I'll fly to Miami, visit him for a few weeks, and then fly from there to LA. I had just bought this fur coat. It's actually faux fur, so don't come after me. But I bought this faux fur coat for a few $100s because I thought it was super cute. We were approaching fall time. I thought that it was like a really nice jacket. I don't know, I got good vibes from it. So I had just bought the jacket, but that will come into the story after. So it was the night before I was going to Miami, and my best friend at the time had invited me over to have a few drinks or whatever and hang out since I wasn't gonna see her for another few months. Little side note, I am not condoning underage drinking. I just said I would always be real on this channel, so we're not gonna leave any details out of this story. So I was hanging out there, and I was gonna hang out there until I went home, but my young naive mind wasn't really playing out the timing of when I was gonna have to go to the airport, and that gets me into trouble. So we had had a few drinks, everything was all good. At around 2 a.m. I realized that I have to leave for the airport at 5 a.m. So I'm like, I better get my booty home, and I go to my house and go to sleep. So as I'm packing up the last of my things, as I'm getting ready to leave in the morning, I'm a procrastinator, I know, don't kill me. I realized that this jacket took up so much space in the bag, so it would just be better if I actually wear the jacket. But I wasn't gonna wear the jacket with my running shoes, so I'm like, I'll wear it with my cute little heel booties. As I'm getting up and getting ready to leave, I realized that the time of going to bed at 2 in the morning and the time of getting up at 4:30 didn't give me enough time to really sleep off the alcohol that I had consumed. I'm in the car ride heading to the airport, and my mom's driving me, and she realizes that I wasn't feeling the hottest. I also didn't smell the best either. And I'm not talking about body odor. I'm talking that it comes right out of my pores the next day after I've drank, and you could smell it on me. So she was a little nervous to drop me off at the airport, underage. You know, I was lectured the whole way there about the decision that I had made and blah, blah, blah. But I was 18 years old, and at that age, you kind of think like, you can't tell me anything. And I get to the airport, and I'm in line to go through customs. I had this big ass bag because I was gonna be, like I said, leaving from Miami to LA. And I had heels on, this fur coat, last night's makeup, and the scent of liquor. I approached the kiosk of the border officer. I'm like drawing a blank of what they're called right now. But I could tell right away that he did not want to be working at 5 in the morning and dealing with people, and that he may or may not be one of those that like to abuse the power that they have been given. So I get up to his kiosk, and right away he looks me up and down and looks at my jacket, and I could already tell this was not gonna go well. And he says to me, "Where are you going?" I said, "Miami." And he says, "And what is it that you're doing there?" And I said, "I'm going to see my boyfriend." Right away, I guess this was a trigger, because I guess what he's eventually going to insinuate I am, use the excuse of boyfriends. But I like genuinely was going to see my boyfriend. So whatever. But he says to me, "This boyfriend of yours, how long have you been together?" And And at the time, ooh, it was a few years. I'm not gonna do the math right now. But I was like, we've been together a few years. And he was like, really? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, has your family met this boyfriend? And I'm like, yeah. He says, has his family met you? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, do they like each other? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, okay, and goes back to typing on his computer. And I'm like, this is super weird. Like, I've traveled back and forth a billion times and never once has this reaction presented itself. But at this point, I'm not really thinking much of it. It's 5 in the morning, I'm exhausted, I really need to get some sleep on this flight. And he looks back over at me and he says, what does your boyfriend do? So I tell him that he's a singer and an entertainer, and he says, is that why he's out in Miami? And I said, yes. He said, is he originally from Toronto? I said, yes. And he says, so how much money would you say he has? And I kind of looked at him like, that is such an odd, irrelevant question. But I said, enough. And he says to me, does he pay for everything for you? And I said, no. He said, did he pay for this flight? I said, no. He said, does he tend to spend for your time? And I really didn't understand what he was getting at because, like I said, it's 5 in the morning, I'm exhausted, I really didn't get to bed on the right amount of time. And he says to me, so who paid for this flight? And I said, I did. And he goes back to typing on his little computer, and I'm like, hey, this is getting super weird. Like, people around me are going past, they're getting in, everything's like moving smoothly except for right here, nothing is moving, I'm being interrogated. And so he looks back up from his kiosk and he says, how often do you go to Miami? And I said, you know, we do long distance, so I try to go every 2 weeks or so, and sometimes he comes out to me and blah, blah, blah. And at this point, I'm starting to feel very, very uncomfortable because I'm starting to pick up on what it is that he may be insinuating, and it is making me feel super weird. So he looks over to me and he says to me something along the lines of with his business. And at this point, I'm irritated, and I replied saying, his business and contract terms are none of my business. And he's like, what do you mean his business is none of your business? And I said, it's really none of my concern, the logistics and the factors of his contract. That's none of my business. I am just with him. And he looks back down and then starts to attack not only just the relationship, but me. Where do you make your money? What do you do? Like, etc., etc. And finally, I look at him and I said, I just graduated high school. And it was almost as if that triggered something in his head, like, oh shit, like I'm interrogating a young girl, like I'm not really thinking through like the things that I'm insinuating. And then he kind of, his whole demeanor changed, and he looks at me and he's like, oh, really? And I said, yeah. I said, I turned 18 and I just graduated high school. So his whole demeanor kind of changed, and he was just like, okay. And I see him looking at my paperwork, and I feel like he was deciding whether or not he was going to put me through to like second questioning or not. And he just looks down and for a good 5 minutes doesn't say much, and I'm like, my heart's racing. I don't deal with things like this well. I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong, but it was the fact that he was kind of going for it. Oh my goodness, I forgot the best detail, guys. I had lost my voice. I had lost my voice. So I'm there at the airport, and when I get up to the kiosk, I'm answering like this. Like, my voice was like pure raspy. I had lost my voice from lack of sleep and dehydration and like many, many factors. So yeah, I forgot to mention that. But anyways, after these interrogations, he looks up at me and he says, so your boyfriend's basically Justin Bieber. And at this point, I am so fed up, and I said, pretty much. And he passes me my paperwork and goes, safe travels. And I walked away and I was like, that was the weirdest experience I have ever had. But at this point, I'm feeling like I need food, I need sleep. I am so frustrated. So I walk over to like my gate, and I see a little stand with food, and I buy like $13 hummus and pita chips, which by the way, it's like this much hummus and like 6 pita chips for $13, but whatever. And I get over to my gate and I drop it all over the floor. And at this point, I'm like, I'm about ready to cancel my trip. Like, this is just not my day. Things are just not going the way they should be. And this man, about 10 minutes later, comes over with a new hummus and says, "You look like you're having a bad day. I think you could have a new hummus." And I looked at him and I was like, "You have no idea. Thank you so much." So I ate my hummus. When I landed in Miami, I had told my boyfriend this entire story and he was laughing at me. He's like, "Well, you did show up at 5 in the morning wearing a big ass cheetah fur coat with heels and last night's makeup on." And I was like, but that is such like a presumptuous accusation. Like, I couldn't even believe it. He never said the words, but we all know what those questions were insinuating. We know. So needless to say, this is honestly the first time since then that I have worn this jacket. I've retired it. I don't care that I spent a ton of money on it. I feel like it gives people the wrong impression and the wrong idea. And every time I look at it, I half laugh and half think of the trouble that it got me into. So that was just like an absolutely crazy experience. I have so many crazy airport experiences because I live in airports in different cities. So if you guys are interested in hearing some more of the crazy things I've gotten myself into at airports, go ahead and leave a comment below and let me know, because I have like stories on deck over that. That is the end of today's story time video. I hope that you enjoyed the trouble that I got myself into and can learn from my mistakes. It was definitely just an awful situation overall that I got myself into. And I mean, when you're 18, you live, you learn, you make mistakes, it happens. I mean, no harm, no foul. I'm here, I survived, I know the truth, I know what I am and what I'm not. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Like I always say, I would really, really appreciate it if you do. And I will see you guys in my next video. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness. And until next time, love you.